So, in our last class, this was something that we were discussing, that is comprehensive model of strategic management. In our today's session, we shall see one more strategic management process that has been given by Whelan and Hunger, and it is called as Whelan and Hunger's model of strategic management. Now, now this particular model, as you can see, it includes four steps, namely environmental scanning being the first step. Once after environmental scanning, the next is strategy formulation. Once after strategy formulation, the third step is strategy implementation, and in the last final stage, we have environmental and evaluation and control. And in this evaluation and control, it also after this it also includes feedback or learning process. Now this feedback of learning, it includes in every stage, as you can see. Okay, now feedback shall be there for all the four stages, and the organization also learns in every particular stage. So we shall see each of these stages in brief, because all of this you have already studied in detail, but I do not have a choice where I can skip it. So whatever has been given in your syllabus, no matter how many times I have repeated it, I will have to do it once again. So let us at least go through this in brief. Now speaking about the first one, that is environmental scanning. Now in this stage what we do, it is the observing stage, or it is the stage where we do a analysis, and we would be spreading information, especially those relating to business environment. Now when we say relating to business environment, it shall definitely include all the information that are external to the organization and all the information which are considered with the internal environment of the organization as well. Now spreading of the information shall be done to all the important people who are present in the organization. Now what does this environmental scanning enables? The environmental scanning process, it shall enable the organization to identify its own strategic factors. Now, what about these strategic factors is that all these elements will have something or some effect on the organization in the future. Now, one of the best way or one of the normally accepted way of doing environmental scanning is done by SWOT analysis. Now this SWOT analysis, it helps the organization to identify its strengths and weaknesses, and also it helps the company in recognizing all the opportunities that it can take advantage of and that which exists in the environment, and also it makes the organization well aware of the possible threats that it has to face and would make the organization ready to face all these threats. So that is what shall be done in the environmental scanning. See, you can observe in the slide that has been put. So the environmental scanning, it basically means gathering information. So When we speak of environmental scanning, there are two factors, that is external to the organization and internal to the organization. When we speak about external, it includes all opportunities that the organization can take advantage of, and also all the possible threats that the organization should make itself ready to face. Okay. Now, when they are speaking about these external opportunities and threats, they have mentioned three to be important among the many that exist. That is natural environment, social environment, and task environment. When we speak about natural environment, it especially relates to the resources and also the climate. Now, how does this affect? Now, resources, because it acts as the input for the organization. So, definitely, when you have to come up with the strategy for the organization, it matters. And climate, there is lot to be spoken about this, which we have already spoken, and you do know why climate matters when it comes for industry or company analysis. Now the second one that we have is social environment. Here we speak about the general forces that exist in the business environment. And the third one there that they have mentioned in the PPT is task environment. Here this is especially about the analysis of the industry. And the second part that we have is internal, which represent all the strengths the organization has and how can it further develop those strengths and the possible weaknesses the company has, and also the facts regarding this weakness as to how it can possibly be turned into something positive. Now, when we speak about internal factors, we have structure, culture, and resources there. Now, structure, especially we can give example of chain of command. Culture, the belief system that exists in the organization, the expectations of the ones who have started the organization, and also the expectations of the ones who are working there in the organization, and the value system that exists in the organization. All these are the elements of culture. Then we have resources. Now when we speak of resources, here we have the assets that the organization has. Now when we speak of the assets, it includes even the human assets and also all the non-human assets. You have skills of the employees, you have the competences and knowledge, all these three especially concerned with the human resource of the organization. That is the first part, that is environmental scanning. Now in the second step, it is strategy formulation. Now whenever we tell about strategy formulation, you can see that has been put up in the slide. It means that we are developing long-term plans. Now all these long-term plans, it shall be developed on the basis of the environmental opportunities and also threats, and it shall be done by keeping in view both the strength of the organization and also the weaknesses of the organization. Now what this strategy formulation consists of, it normally outlines the corporate mission, its objectives, it speaks about making strategies and policy framework. Now, speaking about this, now an organization, it may formulate its objectives in relation to maybe profitability, efficiency of the organization, or growth of the organization. It can also build the objective on the basis of the wealth of the shareholders or even the utilization of resources. Now, when we speak about utilization of resources, we can also mention ROE and ROI. And objective can be built on the reputation of the organization or on the contributions that are being done to employees or contribution made for society or what market leadership the organization have or even on the technological leadership that the organization has. Now ROE is return on earnings, ROI is return on investment. Both of this you have discussed in your management accounting. Now as you can see, mission, it speaks about reasons for the existence of the company. Now objective, it speaks about what is that the organization seeks to accomplish or what is the aim of the organization, and also a lot of time it also mentions the time limit as to by when all these results are to be accomplished. Now along with that we have strategies. Now strategies are in simple words the plans that are being prepared to achieve the mission and the objectives of the organization. Now, policies of the organization can be said as broad guidelines which helps the decision making of the organization. Now, moving forward to the third step, it is strategy implementation. Now, strategy implementation, now it is exercised by comparing actual performance with the previous set objectives of the organization. So the result of evaluation, sorry, the result of strategy implementation can be seen or it can be seen in the middle and lower level management, whereas strategy formulation here it shall be done by the higher level management, and the result of the strategy implementation it shall be from the side of middle and lower level management. So the strategy implementation normally it is done by making programs, budgets and processes, and it may also involve the alteration of the structure of the organization maybe sometime, or sometime it might also cause for the changes in organization culture as well. So the strategies, these are generally implemented in the lower levels of management and they are reviewed by top level management. Now here under this stage it also involves making decisions on daily basis. So sometimes it can also be referred as operational planning. Now the fourth one that we have is evaluation and control. Now speaking about evaluation and control, Now it is exercised by, especially comparing the actual performance with those of what has been set, or what we call as standards. So the result of these activities, it helps managers, and also it helps the management in taking corrective measures so that they can improve their performance in the future. Not only that, now this particular stage, it also helps in identifying all those problems which exist in the implemented strategic plans, and thereby it helps to, you know or it provides useful information to improve the future plans, and also thereby improve future performances. Now, that is where we can tell that both evaluation and control improves the organization performance, which is generally measured in terms of, if we have to tell in terms of financial resources or financial element, then it can be measured in terms of either profit, or also sometimes on the basis of return on investment. And the next element that is there in this process or this model is the feedback or learning process that is there. Now a business unit, it develops strategies and also programs before undertaking any exercise. But it must regularly take corrective actions and decision with regarding to the existing plans. That is to tell, now take an example that there is poor performance. Now this poor performance, they might have found it by measuring things in evaluation and control process. Now this poor performance, it usually indicates that something has gone wrong with either the strategy formulation that has been done, or it might have also gone wrong in strategy implementation. Now that is where this feedback or learning process, it may also help in identifying, some of the key variable which might have been ignored during the environmental scanning and also the assessment. So these are some of the elements of Whelan and Hunger's model. Now when you see the strategy implementation, there you can see that putting strategy into action is the work that would be done here. And we would be having programs, budgets, procedures. Now programs refers to all those activities which are to be completed to finish off a plan. Now budget, it speaks about the entire cost that is involved in accomplishing a particular plan, program, or the policies or any kind of activities in the organization. Now procedure, it speaks about the sequence of the steps that are to be performed to finish the job. And when you see the fourth stage, it speaks about evaluation and control. Now that is nothing but it is concerned with monitoring the actual performance of the organization. Now there comes the concept of performance. Now along the way you can see, uh, now in the bottom of the diagram they have mentioned a line which speaks about feedback or learning, or it can also be together, feedback and learning, where it makes it possible for the organization to make some of the corrections which are necessary. Now this particular model, it has been taken from Whelan and Hunger, Strategic Management and Business Policy toward Global Sustainability, and adopted from Concept of Management, which has been presented to Society of Advancement of Management, International Meeting held at Richmond, VA, 1981. So, this is the Whelan and Hunger model of strategic management. So, the next concept that we have is intended and realized strategies. So, what are these intended and realized strategies? Now, remember one thing, all the strategic management process that we speak or spoke of, or all the strategy management process that happens in a business organization, it always starts with planned or intended strategies. But then the actual, or the what we can call as the realized strategy, they might be far different from what has been planned. Now, taking the idea that an organization's intended strategy shall be a lot of times changed during its implementation phase. Now, two of the management thinkers, that is Mintzberg and Waters, they argue that there are many new strategies which emerge along the process and also which modifies and changes the planned strategy. So what they argue is that over time what the strategies the organization realizes, or this realized strategy is different from what originally or what the organization wanted to do in the initial phase, or the realized strategies are far different from the intended strategies. So, one thing we can note here is that a strategy is always a mixture of a senior management's deliberate strategy. Now, this deliberate strategy is a planned strategy which shall be designed by senior managers for implementation and at different organizational levels. And speaking about these emergent strategies, now these strategies are ones which has not been foreseen by senior management. Now these emergent strategies, they arise during the implementation of the deliberate strategies or the intended strategies. So between the intended strategies and the realized strategies, there exists the emergent strategy. So the intended strategy is the one originally planned. Now this can be emergent in its original, or it might be modified. Or there are also chances that an entirely different form exists because of the developing situation. Now, the realized strategy is what is actually implemented because of changed internal or external circumstances. Now, even management thinkers like Wright during the year 1998 and 1997, along with some other thinkers, they have argued regarding this particular topic in a huge length. Now, speaking about emergent strategies are usually suggested by, functional or operating level managers. That is higher level management. They have to they have to assess the emergent strategy, especially in the context of the already approved strategy. Approved strategies are nothing but the intended strategies. And on the basis of this, they have to decide whether the emergent strategy suits the organization objectives, whether it needs any resources, and they should also see the capabilities of all these strategies. So, when all these activities are to be done, now this would also involve the assessments of the changed environment which necessitates the emergent strategy. Now, normally in an organization, the intended strategies, they are top-down process, whereas emergent strategies are bottom-up approach. Therefore, the effectiveness of emergent strategy depends upon the flow of communication which should happen or which happens between top management and functional level management. Now, in most cases, these strategies that we are speaking, they are a mix of intended and emergent strategies. Now, the unrealized intended strategy, they will be either dropped or replaced by an emergent strategy. Now, the relationship between intended, emergent and the realized strategy is what you can see on the slide that has been put up. Now, the source from which it has been taken is Witcher and Shaw, published in the year 2014, and the name of the book is Strategic Management Principles and Practices. Let us now see the participants who are present in the strategic management process. Now, when we speak of participant or when we speak of an organization, it goes without telling that strategic planning is a team effort and it involves all levels and functional units of an organization. That is top executives, middle managers, supervisors, employees, and all others. Now, although this strategic planning, it shall be started or it begins at the top level management. However, the leaders or this top level management, they should seek and also they should reflect the input of managers, supervisors, even the frontline employees and the operational employees. Now, since strategies are formulated at corporate level, even at strategic business unit level or SBU level that we spoke of, and even in functional level, it becomes necessary that managers from all these levels, they have to participate in strategic management process. And in addition to all this, now the managers, the board of directors, they also play some definite role in strategic management process. Now there are also sometimes consultants, even they play an important role in framing the strategic process. So now having said all this, if we observe an organization, now there shall be five major participants in the strategic management process. And they would be having varied roles and each one with their own duties and responsibilities to be fulfilled. So the first one that we have is board of directors. Second one that we can speak of is the CEO or chief executive officer. The third participant that we can speak of is corporate planning staff. The fourth category we can put managers from different levels of the organization. And in the fifth group, we can also speak about consultants. So let us now see the first one, that is board of directors. Now speaking about board of directors, now these professional boards, now they play very effective role in strategic management process. And uh, these board of directors, they normally participate in setting of the strategic planning and reviewing corporate objectives or formulation of the long-term strategies of the organization, and they also examine and also they do the review of proposal, if at all there are any kind of such things for new investment. They are also concerned with appointment of chief executives and also other important personnels in the organization. Now these board or the board of directors, they normally play a balancing role between strategy making process in the companies and also the shareholders. Now having said that, some of the major functions which are being which shall be performed by the board of directors or which is expected from them are, first one is the approval of corporate budget and also resource allocation for all the strategic investments that are to be done. So first they'll have to approve the budget, and also they'll have to approve the resource allocation for strategic investment. The second thing that they normally do is, periodic review of the SMP or the strategic management process. And they also have this function to perform, that they have to monitor the chief executive's role in strategic management process. And they have the function of triggering the discussion on growth possibilities and also the alternatives of the organization. And they do guide the chief executives in formulating organizational level process. And they have review of strategy implementation with respect to results or profitability. Let us now see the role of chief executive officers in strategic management process. Now in the strategic management process of a company, the chief executive, they play a crucial role. The main functions which shall be performed by chief executives are, normally they include both strategic as well as non-strategic. Now if we have to speak about the important strategic function which shall be put on the head of chief executive officer, they'll have to do the work of deciding the organization mission and objective. So it starts from there, and they'll have to do set major policies, they'll have to set the priorities of the organization and things related to that. They'll also have to provide a direction and also lead the process of the organization in the long term planning. Not only long term, they'll have to direct the short term planning as well. Now they'll have to lead organizational resource development team. Now they have the function of allocating major resources to strategic functions and different projects of the organization. And they also have the work of committing new projects and resources, and they'll have to mobilize support to both the internal and external stakeholders of the company. They'll have to manage relation with the environment, they'll have to manage the board. So these are some of the things which the chief executive officers will have to do. So the next participant that we can take is the role of corporate planning staff. Now who are this? Now we can observe that there is high instability in the business environment, as well as it is a far greater competitive environment nowadays. And as result of these things, the strategic management process has also become much more complex than earlier. And all these calls, for most of the large and especially the multinational companies to have a separate corporate planning department. Now, this department normally it shall be equipped with specialized planning staffs, uh, you know, that form the core of strategic planning activities of the company. Now, this particular department, they perform different functions, mostly which are strategic in nature. Now, in this way, what they do is, first they do, not about first. First, we can see that they assist the chief executive in developing and also formalizing some of the fundamental concepts of the organization, or to be specific, the vision about organization growth and diversification. Now they have the work of scanning the environment and also identifying new business opportunities. um, they have the work of analyzing cost benefits of alternative investment opportunities and also allocating resources to various projects and activities. And they have the work of integrating SPU plans into corporate plans, or monitoring progress of strategic plans at corporate level or SBU level, and also functional levels. They do undertake, midterm review of plans and strategies, and if at all any changes are necessary, they would be suggesting it. And they have the work of evaluating plan performance, measuring the degree of success or failure of strategic plans, and also reporting to the chief executive for the necessary actions that are to be taken. And now we can speak about the role of senior managers or other managers. Now these managers, they can be the heads of strategic business unit as well as functional heads, who normally play important role in the entire process of strategic management. So these senior managers, they also participate in various functional and managerial committees. They would be included even in top management committees which are involved in strategic planning and management. Now, as members of such committees, they may participate in critical decision like, making new investment, restructuring, diversification. So corporate planning staff is also represented in all these committees. So the next thing that we can speak of is the role of consultants or consultants management. Now the consultants, they also play an important role in the process of strategic planning of a company. Now these consultants, they provide their service in diverse functional areas of management. Even the consultant's service, it can be included in the strategic planning as well, especially for those companies where there is no strategic planning division. Consultants can definitely provide inputs for planning whenever the management feels, the need for such consultancies. So the consultants can take planning and strategy exercise. Now the leading strategic consultants, they normally use latest tools as well, especially when, the technological tools or the techniques and modes of coming up with solutions which are very much specific for strategic management issues. Now these consultants, they also offer diversified skills and experience from various companies, which normally make them more effective in formulating strategic plans. So these are some of the topic with regard to um, strategic planning or strategic plans. ಬಿಸಿಲಿಗಿಡಿ ಎಂತ. ನಾನು ಬಟ್ಟೆ ತರಕ್ಕೆ. So, good afternoon, class. Welcome back to this session of strategic management. So, in this session, uh, we shall discuss about strategic drift. So, what might be this strategic drift? We shall see. So, anyone would like to tell what might be this strategic drift? Okay. So, if there is no opinion from your side, I shall continue. Now, if you observe, if you go through some of the case studies or the real life scenario of different organizations, now in the strategic management process of every company, there is a risk of what we call as strategic drift. Now, in other words, this strategic drift is nothing but the gap, okay, Now this gap, when it widens, we call it as the risk of strategic drift. Now this widening gap between a demand for change by environmental forces and the actual strategic change in a company is called as strategic drift. That is I'll repeat it once again. The widening gap between demand for change by environmental forces and the actual strategic change in a company is strategic drift. Now, in simple terms, the failure of the organization to respond to its own external environment. The external environment, that is the competition, the consumer wants, the needs, and such other relatable element is called as strategic drift. Now, strategic drift occurs when a company is unable to act according to the changing business environment or to respond swiftly to the changes in the external environment, and thereby keeps following the same strategy which has served it well in the past, but they realize to take the note of the fact that things in the environment are changing so fast that what might have served them the best in the past might not be of any use in this present context. But even knowing the facts, they might be not interested in implementing all those. So this shows that the company is not following its changing external environment and thereby keeps following the same strategy, and it becomes obvious that it goes out of touch with the external trends that is happening. Now in actual business situation also, many companies have continued with their one successful business model, even when it is clear evident that the model is increasingly inappropriate in the terms of the future trends. Now the one best example that we can give is of in telecom companies, that is Nokia. Now when Android was introduced, when Android was the talk of the town, Nokia did not give much attention to what it has to be, it wanted, what it had to do necessarily. So there was a time when the company was wound up, and later things have changed, and now in some the name of the company is same, but things within the company have definitely changed, and they have come up with their version of Android phones. So that is how external factors matters. No matter your phones are good, the best in the entire competition maybe, but if you are unable to implement all those changes that happens in the environment, that is to tell the company was unable to pick up the trends that were being followed in the external environment. That's where they failed. Or you can take also this Kodak company. They were into photography field, and they did not come up with digital camera, and we know what is the fate of the company. So these are some of the examples that we can give. Now, where there is a pressure for change, this company they usually look for what is familiar. However, these create problems when managing strategic change because the action required may be outside the present system, and also the organization may be required to significantly change their core strategies. Now the situation may be one of declining performance, and companies may first seek to improve implementation of the existing strategy, and in this case it becomes not effective. So a change of strategy might be necessary. And that is where an organization, should always strive to strike a balance between uh, developing the strategies. That is, it has internal pressures, that is maybe with regard to culture or managerial ones, which tend to constrain strategy development, environmental forces, which includes maybe market and competitors. Now all this must be coped up with for a particular strategic process to become successful. Now, every organization has to constantly endeavor to align or realign these two forces to avoid the occurrence of strategic drift. The two forces that I spoke of, it is the gap between demand for change, which is forced upon by the environmental forces, and actual strategic change. Now, with this regard, you have something called as learning organization. Now, due to fear of this strategic drift, every company in today's present world, it has to become learning organization. That is to tell, the environment is too complex and it also changes too rapidly for strategic management to deliver the desired results or the desired outcomes. So such uncertainty in the environment, it requires that the strategy should be managed in more unconventional and discontinuous way and through internal changes. And the managers, they should never regard their experience as fixed and unalterable. In fact, they should be having such a mindset where they should try to develop an organization in which continuously change past experience and practice and strive for new and learns something new, especially in different innovative ways. So, in other words, they should develop learning organization. That is the one which learns every day with every activity it does. So, what you can see in the slide is how the leadership, the learning environment, and learning processes and practices in our learning organization should be. Now, it shall always be influenced, especially by the external influence that the organization has. Now, this learning organization, it shall always be supported by learning operations and developed by ongoing evaluation. Now, leadership should be such that the leader themselves should be the learners, or they should have self motivation to learn new things. They should be such that they are the ones who shall be facilitating the learning environment and learning processes in the organization. Their leadership styles should be one which resembles transformational and transactional styles. And speaking about learning environment, some of the elements are psychological safety, appreciation of the differences. That means there might exist two of the opinions, but the two of the opinions also must be taken into consideration, and the one that is best for the organization shall be selected. And it should be such an environment that the organization is ready to accept the new ideas. And the practices should be reflexive in nature, and the organization should have resources for this learning. Now, speaking about learning process and practice, it should be experimentation in nature. It has information collection, analysis, education and training, information transfer, competency model, and learning goals. Let us now see some of the things with regard to corporate governance and why in between knowing this strategic management we have to understand corporate governance. So, speaking about corporate governance, what is it? Now, even before we start with the meaning, one thing that we can observe in the organization is nothing in the organization shall happen randomly. So, that is to tell, the success or the failure of the firms, it depends on how effectively the plans can be prepared by the organization and how well can these be executed. Now, the challenges of the managers of any organization, it may be, it is very much complex and also it is very much unstructured in nature. Now, there shall be a lot of pressure on the top management as well to be, quick enough in solving the strategic problems. Now, to the top of all these problems, there is increasing allegations on the top management, especially for wrongdoings or economic misbalance and excessive executive compensation. And it is the reason why the firm lenders are under great pressure. Now, when left to its own, there are chances that the chief executive officer sometimes, pursue initiatives that are different from the shareholders' interest. Now, they do so maybe because they lack the wisdom to make decision in the interest of the shareholders, or they do so because of the reason of maybe their pride, their ego satisfaction, or there are also a lot of time there is chances that they do it because of the greed that is existing in them. Now, international surveys which have been done indicates that most people think business executives should always be overpaid. Now, there are few of the research which suggests that chief executive officer receive highest pay when corporate governance is the weakest. And the chief executive officer and the directors are actually the employees of the owners, that is, shareholders. Now, they are the people who actually take the decision and run the firm. Now, the shareholders cannot do much to check the actions of the managers. Now, there is always a potential risk that the interest of the shareholders will be sacrificed for the interest of the manager. Now, this corporate governance, it is a mechanism used to manage the relationships and also the conflicting interests among the different stakeholders. And also, it is a mechanism which aligns the decision with the values of the organization. And also, it helps to determine and control the strategic direction of the organization and also performance of the organization. Now, if we speak in legal terms, firms' shareholders are the company's legal owners. Now, it ensures the long term sustainable value for the firm's shareholders. So, this corporate governance, at its core, it is concerned with identifying the ways to ensure the strategic decisions are made effectively by the organization. Now, this effective corporate governance is of interest to nations because it is something which reflects the societal standards of a country or a nation. Now, over these years, there we can observe numerous corporate scandals which have prompted renewed interest in the mechanism and practice of governance. Now, the regulatory bodies they are forced to institute new laws and regulations for the increased supervision and auditing of business operations along with the financial reporting. So, strategy is the top management's plan to develop and sustain competitive advantage, which cannot be duplicated by its competitors so that the organization's mission is fulfilled. Now, accordingly, an organization which has a strategic plan, which is with accordance to its competitive advantage, is understood and its members understand the reason for the company's existence. So this corporate governance, now it is a debatable and one of the upcoming issues uh, that is generating some kind of importance and headlines in both corporate and also in academic circle. Now the area of concern is the mechanism of the governance and the interaction between the board responsible for governance and corporate strategy. Now, if we see, now it is also concerned with the integration of governance with business operation. Now, the management of Alibaba, they delayed possibly the largest initial public offering in the history of US several times due to issues which were concerning the disclosure and governance. So, corporate governance has become the latest buzzword in the business management. Now, owners of businesses of all sizes they are realizing the importance of governance. Now, the change has been seen as the companies are now developing their strategies, especially considering the principle of corporate governance. And even the system and procedures they are designed strategically to structure authority, balance their responsibility, and so also to be accountable to stakeholders. So, in a nutshell, if corporate governance has to be spoken of, it is about balancing profitability with that of sustainability. Now, that is why corporate governance exists. So, now speaking about this corporate governance, now as a term, it was unknown before 1990s during the initial year of 1990. But now it is the first concern whenever business and finance are discussed. So, corporate governance carries such a wide variety of interpretations, and an effective system of corporate governance has basically two requirements. First, that at the organizational level, it becomes necessary that it needs to ensure that the company fulfills its objectives. Now, this corporate governance, it follows Anglo-American concept where a company works for the well-being of shareholders and good governance, it ensures that the decisions are taken and implemented to enhance the value of the shareholders. That is at the company level or the organization level. Now, at the economic level, we can take the words of the chairman of Federal Reserve of Alan Greenspan. He is of the opinion that corporate governance is to promote the proper allocation of nation's savings to its most productive use. Now, how is corporate governance in India then? Now, corporate governance, it is a concept which was unknown to the Indian corporate until 1990s. Now, Indian companies, they were required to comply with the provisions of Companies Act, which had a limited disclosure and governance provisions. But after the financial crisis of 1990, the Indian government, it was forced to take the initiatives and reformative actions. Now our SEBI, or Security Exchange Board of India, it was formed in the year 92 and as the regulator of the market. So the first major initiative was taken by Confederation of Indian Industries, that is CII, in 1998. Now this particular organization, it came up with the voluntary code for corporate governance. Now the code proposed by this, you know, Con- Confederation of Indian Industries, or CII, was on the lines of, Cadbury Committee, which was intended to be followed by all the companies. Now, scams like that of Harshad Mehta or Ketan Parikh scam, the UTI scam, Bansali scam, and many more, they highlighted the importance of more standardized code. Now, India back then needed mandatory and statutory code, and therefore SEBI came up with setting up of Kumar Mangalam Birla Committee. Now, the committee's recommendations were mainly, in respect of independent directors and the role and the composition of audit committees. So these recommendations, they were accepted and also incorporated by SEBI. Uh, it was incorporated by SEBI as clause 49 of the listing agreement. Now, yet another committee was formed by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs in 2002 under the chairmanship of Naresh Chandra. And SEBI also constituted a committee headed by Narayan Murthy, which also gave its report in 2002. Now, on the basis of the recommendation of the Murthy committee, the clause 49 which was set up was revised, and the present clause 49 is applicable to all the companies which have paid up capital of 5 crores or more, or the companies which have net worth of 25 crores or more any time in the history of the company. So clause 49 has mandatory and also the non-mandatory disclosure norms. And companies, they have to show separate corporate governance report in the annual reports of the companies. So now in brief we shall see the objectives of corporate governance. Now all this way when we discussed corporate governance, we understood that it is integral to the very existing of a company now. So it strengthens the confidence and inspires the investors especially by ensuring companies' commitment to higher growth and profit. Now it seeks to achieve some of the objectives like It is a blend different category of directors, including non-executives and independent director. They enhance the capability of the board for making right decision. Those decisions which would be in favor of the stakeholders and especially the shareholders of the company. Now, this board is balanced to take care of the interest of all the stakeholders. Now, corporate governance, it brings transparent procedures and practices, and it also makes the organization adaptable for taking decisions. Now, these decisions are based on the strength of adequate information. And this board of corporate governance, it will have an effective machinery to serve the concerns of the stakeholders, keeping the stakeholders informed of material development that happens in the company, and also it gets the mechanism for effective and also regular monitoring of the management. Now the board remains in effective control of the affairs. Now the objective of the board should be to take the organization forward, maximizing long term values and shareholders wealth. So, what could possibly be the some of the elements of good corporate governance? Now, this board responsible for all the major functions of the company. Now, it is also responsible to ensure that there is a value creation for its stakeholders. So, corporate governance, it defines the powers, responsibilities, roles, and accountability. Now, it also requires every detail that it should be documented and communicated to all. So, some of the essential elements of corporate governance, uh, we can tell them to be, you know, that board should be transparent in its policies, the processes that it does, and also it should be independent in nature. It should be effective, and all the things that happen should be they should be committed for achieving sustained prosperity of everyone who is there in the organization. It should be accountable to stakeholders. It should be ensured through proper communication channel. Now they should be properly communicated for the actions that are to be taken. There should be fairness to all the stakeholders of the organization. And there are many more to mention, the organizations, they should be socially and environmentally responsible and should be concerned for regulation. There should be clarity, uh, clear legislation, unambiguous legislation. Regulations should act as the foundation for the effective corporate governance. The objectives must be clear in nature. The organization must work on ethical framework. There should be process which is unambiguous in nature. And also there should be clear, demarcation of responsibility and accountability. It should establish clear boundaries for those behaviors which are acceptable and also those behaviors which are unacceptable. Now, there should be sound business planning and establishing performance evaluation measures and ensures good governance. Now, there should be codes of ethical practice and conduct, and long-term corporate strategy should also document the objectives of the company. There should be audit committee. Now, risk being an important part of corporate governance, it should be clearly identified and also analyzed by taking measures. So, proper mechanism should be developed and reviewed at regular intervals. Now, there should be a vigil mechanism and also whistleblower policy should be formulated, helps the employees in reporting about unethical behavior or any actual or suspected frauds or violation of company's code of conduct. Now, having said all these things, uh, there is something that we should know. That is the separation of ownership and control that happens in the corporations. Now, when we see a small business, it is often governed by individuals who are well known to everyone in the organization. So, ownership may rest with one single person, maybe within a family or between a few business partners. Now, as the firms grow larger, now shareholders are the owners of the firm. They are the ones who shall be represented by board of directors who would be normally being elected by them, who have the authority and responsibility to monitor firm. So these changes created the modern public corporations. So primarily legal mechanism that is designed to align, chief executives' actions with that of the shareholders' interest is a company's board of directors who are elected by shareholders. Now they are responsible to ensure that CEO behaves in a way that promotes shareholders' interest. Now, if you remember the Satyam scam in our country, it focused major flaws in corporate governance practices by the board. So, unethical conduct of directors, the fraudulent accounting and disclosure practice, and dubious role of auditors, or inefficiency of the board, failure of the board, especially the independent directors. Now, all this together was the result of Satyam scam. Now, Satyam scam is also called as Indian Enron. Now, these two are the case studies which you go and find on your own what had happened. That is, one is Satyam Computers when we speak of Indian corporate sector, and one more is Enron company. So all this called for corporate governance. Now the question is why director, they normally neglect shareholders' interest. Now having such powers in their command, why do you think? Why does board have frequently failed to stand up to CEOs who neglect shareholders' interests? Now, the reasons could be three basically. One is time constraint, that is, generally the directors are, outsiders holding higher executive position, uh, sometimes with other firms also. Now, many times directors serve several boards, so the number of board meetings is very less. So the director spends very less time for other committee meetings and also informal meetings. So this could be the one possible reason. The next one is CEO factor. That is to tell the CEO is present at all the formal meetings of the board. Now, any criticism of the CEO should be face to face. Now, many directors they are reluctant to confront CEO in this way. Uh, and the problem is aggravated when the CEO also holds the position of chairman of the board. That could be possibly the second problem. Now, the third problem could be, weak shareholder power. So now it is, expected that shareholders of the companies, especially the ones which are performing poor, they would quickly expel the directors and replace them with the good performing ones. But until recently, shareholders have rarely taken such initiative. Now, an election of the director is more of a ratification of the candidates proposed by the incumbent board themselves. Now, along with this, what we have is agency relationship. Now, this agency relationship, it is between the owners and the managers which is being created. Now, it is a relationship between the principals or the owners of the business and the decision makers, that is, agent, who are hired to manage principals' operations and maximize returns on investment. But then, what we spoke, the separation of ownership and managerial control, it can be problematic because of this principle, and the agents have different objectives. Now, what we call as managerial opportunism, it can be defined as something self-seeking or self-interest without them being aware of it. Now, it is an attitude and set of behaviors which is difficult for the principal to know beforehand which agent will act opportunities, with the opportunistic way. Therefore, governance and control mechanism, they try to prevent agents from acting such a way. Now, the scam of Ranbaxy, which happened in the year 2004, is one such case of systematic fraud, as the company was exposed to risk by manipulating the data which was being submitted to the regulators. Now, there are four other topics which we'll have to know before we understand the relationship between corporate governance and that of, strategic management. Now, all these are introduction. Now, this has not been explicitly said in your syllabus. So, I'm telling it in the form of, way where you can understand corporate governance. So, what is important for you is uh, to know corporate governance. But what they shall ask you is the relationship between corporate governance and that of strategic management. So, in that case, the next thing that we'll have to know is the agency costs and the governance mechanism. That is to tell, whenever this governance is there, the firm definitely incurs cost. And agency costs are the sum of the initial, the incentives, monitoring, enforcement, enforcement, and individual financial losses which are incurred by the principal, because the governance mechanism cannot guarantee total compliance by the agent. So, in general, the managerial interest may uh, prevail when the governance mechanisms are weak. So, as it is, a- as it allows the managers a significant amount of freedom, or in a management words, to be specific, the autonomy to make strategic decisions. Now, if strong governance mechanisms are used, the firm's strategies should better reflect the interest of the shareholders. And now to speak about this ownership concentration. Now, both the number of large block shareholders and their percentage of shares, it defines ownership concentration. Now, ownership concentration as a governance mechanism, it has received considerable interest because large shareholders They demand to adopt, effective governance mechanism to control managerial decision. Now, in general, to speak of a large number of shareholders with small holdings and few large block shareholders produce weak monitoring of managerial decision, and they make it difficult for the owners to control their actions. So such concentration has an influence on the strategies and firm's value. So one of the biggest challenges and issues of corporate governance is the concentration of ownership in the hands of the few founding family members, especially in Indian scenario. So there is a gap between the majority and the other shareholders. Then there is this issue of the executive compensation. So executive compensation, it is a governance mechanism that seeks to align the interest of the managers and owners through salaries, bonuses, and long-term incentive compensation, such as maybe stock, awards, and options. So the use of longer-term pay helps the firms to cope with or avoid potential agency problems by linking managerial wealth to the wealth of the shareholders, effectively using, executive compensation as governance mechanism in the or business. Then we have market for corporate control. So now this is an external governance mechanism which becomes active when a firm's internal control mechanism fails. The market for corporate control is made of individuals and by firms that normally buys ownership position in order to take over potentially undervalued corporations. Now, because the undervalued firms executives are, assumed to be responsible for formulating and implementing that led to the poor performance of the organization. So, when the market for corporate control ensures that managers who are ineffective or act opportunistically can be disciplined. So now let us come to the question, how is that corporate governance and strategic management are together? Now having said the history of the corporate governance, why what corporate governance is all about, the elements of it, uh, and what makes something good governance, and how is the relationship between the other elements in the organization, we should be able to know the corporate governance and strategic management. Now, since past, last 20 years, this strategic develop management, it is developing very much, and also it is changing the styles based on thinking, my business is thinking. Now, this is something which has been taken from T.A. Edison, where he tells that my business is thinking. This change, it is especially based on the thought that, the managers, they should be very much creative. Now, they should be aware of company's atmosphere and the changes that happens in the business world. Now, the relationship between organization, environment, the economy, society, they are changing in a very rapid way that there are sometimes chances that you will not even realize that changes are happening. So these managers, they should be creative enough in changing the company's objective. And also there is this fact that the environment definitely changes very rapidly. But a lot of time the objectives of the organization, they might not be able to be adopted in such a rapid phase. So during such a case, the objectives are to be, in an innovative way, they'll have to be changed. Now, the financial scandals which happen around the world, it compelled to develop strategic management by adopting new terms and styles, matching which matches with the reality. So, management, it must take care of interest of its stakeholders, and especially from this point of view, the financial society becomes strict. So, corporate governance was taken as a solution and a key to earn back the lost trust. Now, many acts and codes have been enacted, such as maybe Oxley or Cadbury report, Hampel report, etc. So, strategic management is something which, along the way, it enhances the accountability and also the social responsibility as a part of their strategy, where the shareholders' interests shall be highlighted. So, this can be interrupted by employees' interests or even environmental regulations and responsibilities. They create interest conflict. The corporate governance is the align of the interest of top level managers with the interests of the shareholders. The overall corporate governance, um, it is a structure that has managerial role. Now, it definitely uses different tools like corporate governance legislation, corporate governance ethics, and corporate governance responsibility. All this which can help to attain the strategic objectives of the company. Now, there is agency relation in between shareholders and managers, and also between managers and that of the employees of the organization. So they should keep stakeholders' interest with company's objectives at the top, and agency relationship can lead to managerial opportunism. Now, if there is a weak controlling system, this interest will be maximized, and therefore, ethic codes are created to check. So, corporate governance is related to the way how the company is controlled and administrated. So, it is an important part of strategic management that can improve companies' performance, value creation, and competitive advantage. So, all these are common objectives on the long term basis of corporate governance and also strategic management. Now, this was actually what the corporate governance and strategic management are linked. But then to tell about these few points, now each of that has to be explained. That's why the first 40 minutes was taken. Now, much of these responsibilities, for ensuring corporate governance, it falls on the company's board of directors. So there is a dynamic relationship which exists between corporate governance and that of strategic management. Uh, the management is responsible for planning and the execution of the strategies in the best interest of the shareholders. But taking the decision for personal interest of the board, it has resulted in many scams all over. Now, there are many acts, codes, and legislations which have need enacted all over the world to lessen the managerial actions or the managerial scams. Now, there are many reasons why corporate governance is must for organization to regain the lost trust in the market. Now, internal and external, both the mechanisms are required for effective governance and also decision making. So now this is something that I had to tell in the first lesson, and hereby we come to an end of chapter 1. Now all those that had to be said with regard to first chapter, I hope I have mentioned all of it. And if you do think that there is something that has been left out, uh, if at all there is a topic that I did not discuss, or that if you feel that it has to be discussed, please do let me know so that I can discuss it.